Well, it's one of my favourite days of the year today. We're harvesting the beetroot, and it's got to be one of my favourite crops. It's so easy to sow, it's so easy to plant out, it grows without really any significant pests apart from a bit of leaf miner. It's so easy to harvest and clean up, and it stores incredibly well, and it's really, really good for you. So it's just brilliant, isn't it? Anyway, I'll talk a little bit about beetroot. I'll show you how to harvest it, I'll show you how to clean it up, and I'll show you how to store it. So we sow beetroot, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 times a year. I'll quickly go through them. So the first one is late winter. It's a little bit early. You'd only do that if you've got a polytunnel. I'm only going to sow bolt hardy because chances of it going to seed, if you sow anything else, is quite high. So late February basically, I'll be sowing that. I'll be planting it out in March into the polytunnel beds after I've started to clear them. So that means basically the lettuce beds are no longer really needed in the polytunnel because we have so much lettuce outside that's growing on at that time. And so start clearing it, start putting in carrots and beetroot and turnips and things like that. So that's the first crop, really early harvest in May, just before I put the tomatoes in the polytunnel. Second sowing is about April time. Again, that'll be bolt hardy, and then a couple of weeks later I'll do some Burpees golden, and that's the sort of early main crop. And then we'll do probably another one maybe a month after that, and then that sort of is it for the stuff that we're going to eat in summer. And then we'll do the true main crop sowing, which is the one I'm just harvesting now, and I'll do that, sow it in June, beginning of June, plant it out beginning of July. And we always do it after garlic. It's a beautiful timing. Garlic's just finishing in June, and so yeah, we plant that in July now. Then we harvest that in October. I also like to do one more sowing, and that will be about a month later than that, so about the time I'm planting out the main crop. I'll just do a late crop, and I'll do something again like Burpees golden. That will stand in the ground, and we'll be harvesting that up to the end of the year, and then we'll switch over to the storage crop. So that's about it for beetroot. We eat it pretty much every day of the year. We like a nice mix of varieties. Varieties that we do are bolt hardy, Burpees golden, sometimes Boldor, which is another golden beetroot, very similar to Burpees golden, and Cylindra. And that sees us, that's 2 red ones and 2 golden ones. How do we prepare the ground? Well, I don't do a lot on the ground. Basically, a good thick mulch of mushroom compost is what I use, just because it's cheap and easy for me to get hold of. I might put a sprinkle of well rotted farmyard manure down, and either fresh, well composted, or we sometimes buy bags of the desiccated stuff, Marshall's Organic Extra type of stuff. Maybe a handful per square metre of that. Something that's nice and slow release over a long period of time, not too much nitrogen because we don't want too much leaf growth, we want root growth. Occasionally, maybe every couple of years, I'll put some bloodfish and bone down, but I'll also always put a few handfuls, or maybe one handful of seaweed meal, because I'm really looking for micronutrients. The compost and the manures provide plenty of the macronutrients for something like beetroot, but the micronutrients, I'm always looking at seaweed meal. I think is the best for that, and it's easy to get hold of. And so that is about it. Let's take a look. So this is the beetroot bed. I think it's 3 or 4 rows running all the way down here. There are a few varieties. There's bolt hardy, Cylindra, Boldor and Burpees golden. And the bed is planted carrots, leeks, carrots, beetroot, cabbages and cauliflowers and purple sprouting broccoli. So that's the way it's planted, and the idea being that soon this beetroot bed will become a path to allow us to get access to the cauliflowers and the cabbage and the purple sprouting broccoli. So the whole bed was planted at the same time. It was previously garlic, and then harvested the garlic in June, planted this bed in July. So the leeks look pretty nice now. We'll start harvesting these in about a month's time. And the carrots are Nandor, so they're slightly resistant to carrot fly, although you still get a little bit of carrot fly. But the carrots have grown really nicely next to the leeks, and after we harvest this, we would normally replant this with garlic again, but you could also do field beans or broad beans or overwintered onions. But as it happens, we're giving this plot up because we don't need the space anymore, so we won't be replanting this at all. We'll just be harvesting it until the end of the year. So we're going to get started. So as I mentioned, what we're looking for are good sized roots, and of course the first one that we harvest is a tiddler. I mean, we don't mind a few small ones because obviously we're going to be using these over the next month or so. So we want a nice mix, but this is more the sort of size that we're looking for. Those are beautiful, perfect, store incredibly well. And this is a good size. Again, the sort of size we're looking for in a golden beet. Not that sort of size, you know, that's a bit too small for storage. But yeah, that's fine. A little bit bigger than that ideally. But let's just take a look at some of these Bolt Hardy. Yeah, it's a good old reliable Bolt Hardy. That's a perfect size. Good size. Good size that, yep, really good. So I'm going to sort of chug my way through here, separating them out. These little ones are for using immediately. That's about the smallest size we'd probably store, and we'll store them graded, so we start on the box with the small ones in. So when we clean these up, we just twist the tops off like that. Take any dead stuff off, take any leaves off like that, so that's what we end up with. And then we just brush quickly any excess soil off there, and that's kind of what we end up with, and that is then perfect for storing. So I'll just do a few more of those. So you just twist the top, that's what you want to end up with. Give them a bit of a brush, and if you're doing them on a day like today when it's a little bit moist, they clean up really beautifully. Little imperfections like this, we'd put that one in the use soon box, although they often do just heal up anyway once the plant's in its store. But anyway, that's not perfect, so it goes in the use soon. You do often get these little leaves here, you just pull those off. And again, this one's perfect. And that's kind of what you end up with. Not the most beautiful specimen, I must admit, but not too bad. So Debbie's given the bed a good clear out, and you can see what I mean about a nice little path there now for harvesting all of these, and this is the result. So we've got these golden beetroot, cylindra. These pack in so well when you're storing them in the wood chips. Bolt Hardy, they're the big ones that will store for a very long time, and they're the smaller ones which will still store well. These are the ones for pickling, and these are the ones to use between now and the end of the year. And I said we've got some in the ground as well, so the golden beetroot That's why there's no golden beetroot in there really to speak of, because we'll be using the ones from the ground fresh. So that, I think, is a pretty good harvest. That's how much we need, those 4 containers, to see us through from January, February, March, April and into May. So I'm back home now, and these are the sort of wood chips we use. These are pet bedding, and they're pine, I think, naturally antiseptic and antifungal, although if they do get too damp then they can get a little bit of mould on them. Doesn't seem to hurt the beetroot at all. So I much prefer this to sand, because they're just really, really light and easy to harvest from. So first job is just to give them a bit of water, and they do need to be reasonably moist, so about that much. And then you basically just, not surprisingly, biggest at the bottom, and you want the beetroot not to touch each other, so you will fill in these gaps. And I like them on the side, because if you do them on the side, the leaves don't grow up and get access to the light, because you don't really want them you want them alive, but you don't want them growing actively, because then they use up a lot more of the water that's in the roots, and they don't store as well. We want to cover these like this. Try and get just a few wood chips down in the gaps. You don't need a huge number, but enough to be roughly kind of in contact, and then a little bit more water. And then you do your next layer. Just give it a little bit tiny bit more than that, I think. The beetroot, you know, they want to be damp but not wet, so you just have to kind of make your own kind of assessment as to what that means. I mean, these, you don't want these dripping with water or anything, just wet enough to soak up water. Okay, so about like that. The top though, I'm going to have to use smaller ones because there's not enough room. So there we go. So I topped it up quite nicely. So there's a decent layer on top. And as luck would have it, I actually found a beetroot in here that's been in store for a few months. Absolutely rock hard. You can see it's still alive, growing a little bit. If you put them in like this, then they'll grow up and you'll get leaves coming out the top. And although that looks really nice, and that's what we did in the first year, just because it looks really nice to have all these little leaves growing, you don't really want them actively growing. So yeah, we lay them on the side now. And you can see why I like the cylindra, because they just pack so nice and compact. It loads in. Some of the bigger cylindra, and finally the golden ones. And I have no real evidence for this, but I don't actually think it matters whether the beetroot are touching each other. I think the reason that you want them spaced is to get the wood chips around them so that there's a moisture reservoir, because they just want that moist skin. Whereas if they're like touching each other like this, then there's not so much moist wood chips surrounding them. So that's my theory. As I say, I've never really had a chance to test that out. So these are the use first ones, and it's because of things like this split here, deep hole there, another deep hole here, hole, these are slug holes probably. So, you know, they've all healed up, sealed up, and they probably will just be fine, but, you know, why not sort them and use the ones that are slightly damaged first. And the next layer we've used first are just these little ones, and they're just small, and the smaller they are the more moisture they're going to lose over time, and so they're going to need using up before the end of the year. Wondering how much water to use? Well, I used about 17 litres of water, and these chips were slightly moist already because they've just been stored in a bag on the drive, or have been used previously for some of the summer beetroot. So you might need, if they're completely dry, you might need 20 litres of water. So there's 5 there, so 4 litres of water for each one of those. Seems a lot, but they just soak up the water really well, these wood chips. So they don't actually feel like damp once they've soaked it up. But don't stack them like this because they need a bit of air to breathe. So we store them in here. It's pretty much frost free, although you know there is a chance of a frost if it's really, really cold. But inside those, insulated with the wood chips, they should be fine. It's good, I think, not to put anything on the top. If you do, obviously it would keep the moisture in, but also they do tend to go like a little bit mouldy. So every so often just put a bit of water over the top just to keep them moist. And that's about all you need to do. Just harvest away. I'll show you some around our store later, all the different things we've got in another video. It's worth having a few mouse traps around. We generally have them on every shelf, and we use cat food in ours, dry cat food. They seem to really like that. Struggle to get it out a bit because it's quite a big sort of lump of food. Lasts for ages, so you know it's still tempting the mice after a week or so. And while they're struggling to get it out, of course, they're just, you know, it's going to be very, very easy to catch them. So I hope you like this quick video. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Allotment channel, and if you have a different way of storing your beetroot, I'd really like to hear about it. We've used wood chips now for 4 years, it's been brilliant. We've never had an issue with it, but yeah, always looking for new alternatives, especially if they're easier and cheaper. See you soon.